Hi, I'm Lore and today I bring you a full tutorial on how to paint fish using masking fluid to achieve a shiny dotted pattern. Some of you asked me to make a tutorial about how I painted my Pearl Gourami fish. In case you don't know what I'm talking about, is this fish here. And you can also find this Pearl Gourami on my tropical fish poster on my Etsy shop. I will leave the link down below. So I thought it would be nice to have a tutorial that explains the technique of painting, that kind of shiny colorful dots and scales that so many fish have. I hope that by the end of this video you can paint not only a Pearl Gourami fish, but any kind of fish that has those shiny reflective scales or a colorful dotted pattern. For this tutorial you will need watercolor paper, watercolor paints, 2 watercolor brushes, 2 water cups, a paper napkin, a pencil and some fine liners or color pencils for those final details and lines. And the most important material that you'll need in order to get those bright and colorful scales or dots is masking fluid and some tools like this to apply, or a brush that you don't use or you don't mind to destroy. Because after dipping the brush in masking fluid, it will be ruined forever, trust me. So if you don't have any tool like this or a similar one, you can find a brush that's old and that you don't use and that from now on you can only use for masking fluid. Right, now find some reference pictures of the fish that you want to paint. I'll paint a Pearl Gourami, but with different colors this time. The old one was dark red and blue and this one will be more bright. So I will use colors like yellow, orange, silver and light blue or turquoise. The first step, as always, will be to sketch the fish. So get your watercolor paper and a pencil or a mechanical pencil and start drawing the fish in the middle of the page. Make sure not to press too much in case you need to erase some lines later on. If it helps you for later, you can mark the different color areas of the fish with some lines in your sketch. Once you have finished the drawing, you can start painting. To make sure we get those bright and light scales, you'll need to paint now the whole fish with the lightest tones and making sure you leave the white of the paper in the areas where you want the most bright sparkles. If you are not sure where to leave the brightest areas in your painting, you can squint your eyes while looking at the photo reference and you'll see where those very bright areas are and where are the darkest. So you will be able to see those contrasts better if you do this trick. The first layer will be a wet on wet technique where we'll add those different light color tones and we will let the colors flow and mix between them. Now it's time to let the watercolor dry completely before the next step. Some time has passed and the first layer is dry now, so we can continue with the most important part, the masking fluid, which is a sticky liquid that you apply to your painting so it preserves the white of the paper when you are painting on top. I have this one that I bought many years ago from Winsor & Newton. Since it's such a big bottle and I usually don't use as much of the masking fluid, I probably should have bought the smaller bottle because this one has a thick dry layer on top, probably because I don't use it as often and it's so old. So if you're getting one, just get a smaller version and see how that works for you. To apply the masking fluid, I use these pointed tools which I think are meant to be used for modeling or sculpting or something like that. I used to make my own rubber stamps, so I would use these tools to make holes in my stamps. But one day I decided to use them for the masking fluid too, as I didn't have anything else to use it. And it works great, especially if you want to make perfect dots. Also, because they are metal, you can easily remove the masking fluid after you use it. So, if you're using a brush, you'll have a harder time to remove it from its bristles. That's why I suggest you use an old brush that you don't use for painting anymore. using the masking fluid to paint all of those shiny dots or scales in the fish. This way I'm preserving the light of the first layer and the white of the paper in the areas where there's no paint. Once I have finished adding the masking fluid, it's very important to let it dry again, completely. The next step will be to keep painting by adding watercolor layers. I'm going to paint on top with more vivid and contrasted colors in the areas of the fish that are darker, and I'll just add a light layer on the areas where there is less contrast in the fish, making sure I'm blending and transitioning those colors so there are no sharp contrasts when changing the color. But then of course, if the fish has a very dark area, we will paint that now, as well as the eye and other details like the fins or patterns on the skin. Once you are happy with your painting so far, you will need to let it dry completely. Once it's dry, you can finally take off the masking fluid from your painting. To do this, you can use either your fingertips or an eraser or something similar that works for you. But be careful not to rub too hard, or you could damage the paper, especially if your painting is not fully dry. When all of the masking fluid is removed from the painting, you will end up with a beautiful dotted pattern of the fish that shows that first light watercolor layer that we did at the beginning. If you need to make some dotted areas less bright or less contrasted, you can take a flat brush with a thin watercolor layer. This means that there is very little pigment in your brush, so more water than pigment, and drag it on the areas you will need to see less contrast on the dots. And you can always correct yourself with a paper napkin if needed. So now you know my secret for painting dotted fish like this Pearl Gourami, and you can apply this technique to painting any other fish or any other thing that needs this kind of pattern. To finish the painting, I'm going to add some more details like in the eye and maybe some lines with a fine liner and maybe some white lines and details with a white gel pen. Well, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that you found it helpful for your own paintings. Let me know if you would like to see any other specific tutorials from me, and I will make sure to write your suggestions and ideas on my notebook for new ideas for new YouTube videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and thank you so much for supporting my work. See you next Friday. Bye!